No matter how deeply you love a woman, there are certain things you should never do if you want to keep your self-respect, your peace of mind, and the relationship itself healthy. Many men believe that the more they sacrifice, the more a woman will appreciate them. They think overlooking problems, abandoning their standards, or constantly proving their love will make her value them more. But in many cases, the opposite happens. Love should never require you to lose yourself. In today's video, I'm going to share 8 things you should never do for a woman, no matter how much you love her. Music. These aren't about playing games, becoming cold, or refusing to care. They're about understanding the difference between loving someone and giving away your confidence, your identity, music, and your self-worth in the process. The truth is, many relationships don't fail because love was missing. They fail because one person ignored warning signs, tolerated unhealthy behavior, or sacrificed too much, hoping things would eventually change. By the time they realize what has happened, they've already lost a part of themselves. Music. If you're new here, welcome. On this channel, we explore female psychology, relationship dynamics, and the habits that help men build stronger, music, healthier, and more respected relationships. If that's the kind of content you're looking for, make sure you subscribe and join our growing community. Music. Let's begin with the first mistake, because it's one that traps countless men before the relationship has even had a chance to become music healthy. The first thing you should never do for a woman is ignore serious red music flags simply because you're afraid of starting over. This is one of the biggest mistakes men make, especially when they've already invested time, emotions, and hope into the relationship. Many men convince themselves music that the problems aren't that serious. They tell themselves, nobody is perfect. Every woman has flaws. Maybe she'll change once she knows how much I love her. The problem with that way of thinking is that it encourages you to ignore behaviors you already know you can't live with. Red flags don't usually disappear on their own. If a woman repeatedly shows disrespect, music, dishonesty, manipulation, or behavior that goes against your values, hoping she'll suddenly become a different person rarely works. In many cases, the longer you tolerate it, the more normal it becomes. What bothered you at the beginning, slowly music becomes something you're expected to accept. That's why it's important to be honest with yourself from the very beginning. Ask whether this is something you can genuinely live with for years, music, not just weeks. If the answer is no, don't stay simply because you're afraid of being alone or starting another relationship from scratch. Ironically, music, walking away, is sometimes the very thing that forces people to reflect on their behavior. Whether they choose to change or not is their responsibility, not yours. Music. A healthy relationship isn't built by pretending serious problems don't exist. Music. It's built by choosing someone whose values, character, and behavior are already compatible with yours. Never sacrifice your peace by convincing music yourself that obvious warning signs will magically disappear with time. The second thing you should never do for a woman is make her the center music of your entire world. The moment your happiness depends completely on her attention or her approval, you've handed over more power than any relationship should ever have. Many men don't realize they're doing this until it's too late. Music. If she doesn't text back, they can't focus. If she's upset, their entire day is ruined. If she pulls away for a while, they panic, overthink everything, and start blaming themselves for problems they don't even understand. One common example is when a woman says nothing's wrong after you've asked what's bothering music her. Some men keep asking the same question over and over, apologizing without knowing what they did, hoping they'll somehow fix the situation. Music. If you've asked respectfully and she chooses not to tell you, give her the space she asked for. You shouldn't have to drag an answer out of someone who isn't ready to talk. When a woman realizes that your emotions rise and fall entirely because of her, the balance in the relationship begins to change. She sees that your peace depends on her decisions. Over time, that can make the relationship unhealthy for both of you. Music love should add to your life, not replace it. Keep pursuing your goals, keep your friendships, keep your routines, and the things that gave music your life purpose before the relationship began. A woman should be an important part of your world, but she should never become your entire world. The strongest relationships happen when two people have meaningful lives of their own and choose to build something meaningful together. The third thing you should never do for a woman is keep excusing music, bad behavior, just because you're afraid of losing her. This happens more often than many men realize. Music, instead of confronting the problem, they convince themselves that every woman behaves that way. So there's music, no point expecting anything different. That's one of the easiest lies to believe. When you keep saying all women are like this, what you're really doing is giving yourself permission music to tolerate behavior that doesn't sit right with you. Whether it's constant disrespect, dishonesty, manipulation, or a complete lack of accountability, you begin treating it as something normal instead of asking whether it's something you should accept. Music. The truth is what you repeatedly tolerate becomes the standard for your relationship. A woman quickly learns what you'll overlook and what you won't. If every time she crosses a boundary, you make excuses for her, she'll naturally assume that boundary wasn't important to begin with. But if you calmly refuse to accept behavior that goes against your values' music, she also learns where the line is. This is why so many men experience the same problems in one relationship after another. They change partners, but they never change what they're willing to tolerate: music. As a result, the same unhealthy patterns keep repeating themselves. Instead of asking, "Why do I always meet women like this?" ask yourself a different question. What have I been accepting that I should have walked away from? That question is often far more revealing. Healthy relationships aren't built by covering up bad behavior with love. They're built when both people understand that respect, honesty, and accountability are non-negotiable from the very beginning. The fourth thing you should never do for a woman is lose your self-respect, trying to keep music the relationship alive. The moment you start begging for attention, constantly music, chasing reassurance, or apologizing for things you didn't do, you've moved away from building a healthy relationship and into trying to earn basic respect. There's a difference between making peace and abandoning your dignity. Every relationship has disagreements. Sometimes someone has to break the silence and start the conversation. There's nothing wrong with being that person. Music. If your goal is to solve the problem together, but being a peacemaker doesn't mean accepting all the blame just to avoid conflict. Music. Some men fall into that trap even when they've been hurt. They're the ones apologizing. Even when they've been ignored or disrespected, they're the ones sending long messages trying to fix everything. Meanwhile, the woman never takes responsibility for her own actions because she knows he will eventually give in. That isn't love. Music. It's an unhealthy pattern. A relationship can only survive when both people are willing to acknowledge their mistakes. If one person is always apologizing while the other never accepts responsibility, the balance disappears. Over time, resentment replaces affection and respect music slowly fades. Never believe that constantly lowering yourself will make a woman value you more. In most cases, it has the opposite effect: music. Respect grows when both people are accountable, not when one person carries the entire emotional weight of the relationship. Love should never require you to sacrifice your dignity. You can be kind, patient, and forgiving while still expecting mutual respect. The strongest relationships aren't built by one person constantly chasing peace. They're built by two people who are equally committed to protecting it. The fifth thing you should never do for a woman is abandon your own life just to make her happy. A relationship should become part of your life, not replace the life you are already building. Some men slowly disappear the moment they fall in love. They stop spending time with friends. They neglect their hobbies. They lose focus on their work and personal goals. Music. Every decision begins revolving around one person. If she wants attention, everything else, music, can wait. If she calls, they immediately drop whatever they're doing. Before long, they don't even recognize the man they used to be. That isn't commitment, it's dependency. Music. A woman may appreciate your attention, but she shouldn't become your only source of purpose. The things that made you interesting before the relationship, your ambition, your discipline, your confidence, music, your ability to pursue your own goals, should still exist after the relationship begins. When a man gives up everything for a music woman, something important changes. He stops growing. His world becomes smaller. Music and the relationship starts carrying the weight of his entire identity. That's a burden no healthy relationship can carry for long. Music. The happiest couples don't spend every second together. They encourage each other to continue growing as individuals while building a life together. Music. That balance keeps the relationship fresh because both people continue bringing new experiences, ideas, music, and energy into it. Never allow your dreams, your purpose, or your personal growth to disappear because you've fallen in love. A woman should complement your life, not become the reason you stop living it. The strongest relationships are built by two people who continue pursuing meaningful lives, music, while choosing each day to share those lives with one another. The sixth thing you should never do for a woman is tolerate repeated disrespect because you're hoping she'll eventually change. Everyone can make a mistake. People say things they regret, lose their temper, or act poorly from time to time. But when disrespect becomes a pattern instead of an exception, ignoring it only makes the situation worse. Music. Many men keep giving chance after chance because they believe love means endless patience. So they tell themselves, she didn't mean it. Music. She's just stressed. Things will get better once life calms down. Weeks turn into months and months, turn into years, yet the same behavior keeps happening. At some point, you have to stop asking whether she loves you and start asking whether she's treating you with the respect every healthy relationship requires. Respect isn't just about avoiding insults. It's about how someone speaks to you during disagreements. It's about whether they value your opinions, keep their promises, and consider your feelings instead of constantly dismissing them. Without respect, love struggles to survive because every disagreement leaves another crack in the foundation. Music. You teach people how to treat you by what you consistently accept. If someone repeatedly crosses the same boundary and there are never any real consequences, music, they eventually assume that boundary doesn't matter. That's why simply complaining about disrespect isn't enough. Your music actions have to match your words. Sometimes the healthiest decision isn't to argue louder or love harder. Sometimes it's to calmly step away from a situation that keeps damaging your confidence and your peace of mind. Never confuse enduring repeated disrespect with being loyal. Real loyalty should never require you to abandon your own self-worth. Music. The seventh thing you should never do for a woman is give up your boundaries just to avoid upsetting her. Healthy boundaries aren't walls that push people away. They're standards that protect mutual respect, honesty, and emotional well-being. Without them, even the strongest relationships begin to lose balance. Music. Many men are afraid to say no because they worry it will create conflict. They agree to things they're uncomfortable with. They stay silent when something bothers them. Music. They allow behavior that goes against their values because they believe keeping the peace is more important than standing music their ground. At first, it seems harmless. You tell yourself it's only a small compromise. Music. But small compromises have a way of becoming permanent expectations. Once someone gets used to you saying yes to everything, they may begin to expect it music every single time. A relationship where one person always sacrifices their needs eventually becomes one-sided. Having boundaries doesn't mean you're controlling or difficult. It simply means you understand what you're willing to accept and what music you're not. A mature woman may not always agree with every boundary you have, but she will respect the fact that you have them and communicate them honestly. Think about the relationships you admire most. They're rarely built on one person constantly giving music in. Instead, they're built on two people who respect each other's limits and understand music that compromise should go both ways. Never be afraid to calmly say, "I'm not comfortable with that," or "that doesn't work for me." The right woman won't respect you less because you have standards. Music. In fact, healthy boundaries often create stronger trust because both people know exactly where they stand. Love should never require you to abandon the principles that make you who you are. Music. The eighth and final thing you should never do for a woman is stop respecting yourself just because you're afraid of losing the relationship. This is where many of the previous mistakes eventually lead. Music. A man ignores red flags, excuses bad behavior, gives up his boundaries, abandons his goals, tolerates disrespect, and before long, he no longer recognizes himself. The saddest part is that it usually happens little by little. Very few men wake up one morning and decide to lose their confidence. Instead, they slowly trade pieces of themselves in exchange for temporary peace. Music. They stop speaking honestly because they don't want another argument. They stop expressing their needs because they don't want to seem demanding. Music. They accept treatment they would have never accepted before because they've convinced themselves that any relationship is better than no relationship. But a relationship that costs you your identity is far too expensive. Real love should make you feel stronger, not smaller. It should encourage you to become a better version of yourself, not force you to hide your opinions, music, abandon your values, or constantly question your worth. If you have music to sacrifice your self-respect just to keep someone in your life, the relationship is already built on an unhealthy foundation. Remember, confidence isn't about acting tough or pretending you don't care. Music. It's about knowing your value regardless of whether someone chooses to stay or leave. When you truly respect yourself, you stop chasing people who repeatedly show you they don't respect you. You stop negotiating your standards just to avoid being alone. A healthy woman doesn't want a man who has lost himself, trying to please her. Music wants a man who knows who he is, stands by his values, and chooses to love from a place of confidence instead of fear. And when you protect your self-respect, you're not music, just protecting yourself. You give every future relationship the best possible chance to succeed. We've covered 8 things you should never do for a woman, no matter how deeply you love her. If you noticed, none of these points were about treating women badly, refusing to compromise, or pretending you don't care. They were about protecting the one thing every healthy relationship depends on: mutual respect. Music. Love without respect eventually becomes exhausting. When you ignore red flags, make someone your entire world, excuse repeated bad behavior, lose your self-respect, abandon your own life, tolerate constant disrespect, give up your boundaries, or slowly lose your identity, you're not strengthening the relationship. You're weakening the very foundation it needs to survive. The healthiest relationships aren't built on fear. They're built on two people who choose each other while still maintaining their individuality, their confidence, and their values. Music. Neither person has to shrink so the other can feel bigger. Neither person has to constantly prove their worth. Respect flows both ways, and so does accountability. Music. One mistake many men make is believing that saying yes to everything makes them more loving. In reality, a man who has standards, communicates music honestly, and respects himself often creates a relationship that is far healthier than one built on endless sacrifice. Music. Being kind doesn't mean becoming a doormat. Being patient doesn't mean accepting repeated mistreatment. Music. And loving someone should never require you to stop loving yourself. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Which of these 8 mistakes do you think men struggle with the most today? Music. Have you ever found yourself ignoring one of these warning signs only to realize later that it was costing you your peace? Share your experience in the comments below. I read as many of them as I can, and your story might help another man who is going through something similar. Music. If you found today's video valuable, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our future discussions on female psychology, music, relationship dynamics, and becoming the kind of man who builds healthy, lasting relationships. Once again, my name is Isabella. Thank you so much for watching. Stay music confident, protect your self-respect, and I'll see you in the next video.